Former Vice President Mike Pence is expected to fight a subpoena from the special counsel investigating Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Sources tell CNN the move is tied to legislative privilege, not executive. They say Pence argues his former role as president of the Senate shields him from testifying. Now, the argument raises the Constitution's speech or debate clause, which protects legislators from certain law enforcement actions if the conduct in question is related to their legislative duties. With us now to discuss is CNN legal analyst and former White House ethics czar Norm Eisen. He served as the House Judiciary Special Counsel in former President Trump's first impeachment trial. Norm, great to see you. So what do you make of this rather novel strategy from the former vice president and his lawyers?
Bianna, the executive privilege argument to resist testifying has failed. So now they're pulling another arrow from the quiver of constitutional defenses. But it's not going to work because there is no absolute speech or debate immunity for a vice president or anyone else from showing up and answering the kinds of questions we have here.
Well, he's going to argue, I would imagine, that this was not during his time as vice president, but specifically as a president of the Senate. What is your response to that?
First, if you look at the speech or debate clause, it says senators and representatives, not presidents of the Senate or other constitutional officers. So it's limited, Bianna, by its own terms to senators and representatives. He was not a senator. He was not a representative. So he loses on that ground. And then the clause is also limited to speech or debate in either house. So if he were saying, well, I don't want to be questioned about what I was thinking when I was sitting in the chair presiding over the chamber, that's one thing. But it's dubious whether that blocks all questions about everything that happened in the run-up. Now, the courts have held that some things are considered legislative acts, but I just litigated this issue in the Lindsey Graham case where he similarly tried, and he is a senator, and he similarly tried to say, I don't have to show up for questions at all. He lost, and so will Mike Pence.
So if you were to advise Mike Pence, which you are not, you say the better solution would have been to follow the Lindsey Graham path, and that is just to show up and answer each question by question and take it from there.
Well, if I were advising Mike Pence, I would have to give him not only legal advice, but political advice. And this is the advice Lindsey Graham got, too. He fought furiously. He lost in multiple courts in multiple states and at the federal level and at the Supreme Court before he finally gave up. So Pence is in a political pickle, not just a legal one, because he doesn't want to look like he's cooperating with this investigation. He did the same thing, Bianna, with the January 6th investigation. He has to put up a show of resistance. So I think that may be the right thing for him with the Republican primary electorate. It is not the right thing for America, however. And so I do think from a legal perspective, he should say, I'll show up, I'll answer questions, and if some of them are constitutionally prohibited, I'll object. That would be the legally and the proper thing to do and the patriotic thing.
I mean, he's been willing to speak out and give interviews and write a book. How do you think that prosecutors, the DOJ, will respond to this?
Well, I think they'll fight him as they have fought and won all the executive privilege arguments in the post-Trump presidency. That's why Pence is not leading with executive privilege, because those arguments have failed like this one is going to do. So I think they'll push back, just like the prosecutors did in the Lindsey Graham case, where Graham was wanted for the state prosecution that is possible in the Georgia investigation. And prosecutors will fight it. They have to fight it because there is no blanket immunity of this kind for a vice president under the speech or debate clause.
This will just prolong this investigation, that we do know. Ambassador Norm Eisen, great to see you. Thank you.